Welcome to Cozy Sleep Haven. Tonight's episode invites you into the warm glow of Sam's Bakery on a snowy Valentine's evening in Havenport. As the snow falls softly outside, Sam's quiet evening takes an unexpected turn when a last-minute guest steps inside, bringing a spark of inspiration to the cozy space. Together, we'll explore the delicate artistry of Valentine's treats, from heart-shaped cookies to rich chocolate creations, while Sam and his guest share stories, laughter, and moments of connection. This gentle tale of warmth and understanding will wrap you in the comfort of a snowy night and guide you peacefully toward rest. Here at Cozy Sleep Haven, we celebrate the simple joys that bring comfort, whether it's the glow of a warm bakery, the shared magic of storytelling, or the quiet rhythm of falling snow. Our goal is to help you unwind, relax, and let the day's worries gently fade away. Let's take a moment to settle in. Close your eyes if you'd like, and take a slow, deep breath in and out. Feel the warmth of the bakery surround you, the gentle hum of the ovens like a soft lullaby. Picture the glow of twinkling lights and the rich aroma of chocolate and sugar filling the air. Take another breath in and out, letting the quiet of this peaceful night settle over you. Now, let's step into Sam's Bakery and begin this cozy Valentine story. Snuggle up, wind down, and let's get cozy. The soft glow of the bakery lights spilled into the snowy streets of Havenport, casting warm golden rectangles on the frost-covered pavement. Outside, the town was still, blanketed in fresh snow that muted even the faintest sounds of the evening. It was the kind of Valentine's night that felt wrapped in a cozy hush, as though the world had slowed to savor the moment. Inside the bakery, Sam moved with quiet purpose, tidying up after a long day of Valentine's Day orders. The air still carried the scent of chocolate and sugar, mingling with the faint warmth of bread from the ovens. Heart-shaped garlands, strung carefully along the windows, fluttered slightly each time a draft of cold air crept in as Sam adjusted the door latch. The counters were sprinkled with a dusting of flour, and trays of chocolate-dipped strawberries rested neatly by the register, their glossy surfaces reflecting the soft light. Sam paused for a moment, leaning against the counter and letting out a slow breath. Valentine's Day had always been a mixed bag for him. He loved the holiday's charm, the flowers, the sweet gestures, the way it brought people together. But there was a pang of longing, too. The kind of quiet ache that settled in when the day ended and the bakery emptied out, leaving only the soft hum of the ovens and the faint crackle of snow outside. He glanced at the chalkboard menu near the counter, still marked with today's Valentine's specials. Raspberry tartlets, red velvet cupcakes and heart-shaped sugar cookies. The treats had flown off the shelves, leaving only a few pieces waiting to be boxed up for tomorrow. Sam smiled to himself, thinking of the customers who had come through earlier, some shy, some beaming, all of them carrying a little extra joy in their step as they picked up their sweets for someone special. As he wiped down the last of the counters, the bell above the door jingled softly, startling him. He glanced toward the entrance, expecting to see a straggler who'd forgotten their order. Instead, a figure stepped inside, brushing snow from her coat and shaking out her damp hair. The faintest chill followed her, curling around her boots and pooling on the bakery's warm wooden floor. "Hi," she said, her voice tinged with apology as she looked around. "Am I too late?" Sam straightened, his curiosity piqued. "Not at all," he said, offering her a welcoming smile. "Come on in. What can I do for you?" The bakery, already warm and inviting, seemed to soften even more as the door swung shut behind her, sealing out the cold and drawing her into its cozy glow. Valentine's night wasn't over yet, Sam thought, and for the first time that day, he felt something unexpected, an inkling of excitement in the quiet hum of the evening. The woman stepped further into the bakery, her cheeks pink from the cold and her coat dusted with snowflakes that quickly melted in the bakery's warm air. She adjusted the strap of a leather satchel on her shoulder and looked around, taking in the cozy decorations and the faint scent of chocolatey and sugar. Her gaze finally settled on Sam, her eyes soft but curious. "This place is lovely," she said, her voice warm and sincere. "I saw the light from outside, and I couldn't resist coming in." Sam gave a small chuckle, running a hand over the back of his neck. "Well, I'm glad you did. I don't get too many visitors this late, but you're welcome to stay as long as you like." She smiled, the corners of her lips quirking up as she stepped closer to the counter. "Thank you. I was just out walking, trying to clear my head and, well, I guess I was hoping for some inspiration." Sam tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "Inspiration?" The woman nodded and reached into her satchel, pulling out a well-worn sketchbook. "I'm an artist," she said, holding it up. "I've been working on a Valentine's piece, something that captures the feeling of love in the small, everyday moments. But I've been stuck all day. I thought maybe a walk would help, but now I think this bakery might be exactly what I needed." Sam glanced at the sketchbook and then back at her, noticing the way her fingers lingered on its edges as if it were a part of her. "An artist, huh? Well, I'm not much of an artist myself, but if you're looking for inspiration, You've definitely come to the right place. Valentine's Day has been keeping me busy all week." Her eyes lit up at that, and she set the sketchbook gently on the counter. "I can see why. It smells incredible in here. And the decorations, it's like stepping into a storybook." "Eee." Sam laughed softly. "That's the goal. I like to think of this place as a little escape from the world. Somewhere people can slow down, breathe, and maybe leave with something sweet to brighten their day." She studied him for a moment, as if weighing his words, then extended her hand. "I'm Claire, by the way. I didn't mean to barge in without introducing myself." "Sam," he said, shaking her hand with a firm but gentle grip. "And you're not barging in. Honestly, it's nice to have some company." Claire smiled again, her expression softening. "Well, Sam, if you're willing, I'd love to see what you've been working on for Valentine's. Maybe your creations will spark something for my sketches." Sam glanced at the tray of treats he'd set aside earlier and felt a spark of excitement. "I think I can help with that. Let me show you." As he turned toward the kitchen, Claire settled onto a stool near the counter, her sketchbook open and her pencil poised. The warm glow of the bakery seemed to wrap around her, drawing her into its magic. For the first time all day, Sam felt a quiet thrill, a sense that this Valentine's night might hold more than just flour and sugar. Sam carried a tray of his Valentine's creations from the kitchen, setting it gently on the counter in front of Claire. The treats were arranged like a painter's palette, each one a masterpiece in its own right. "Here we go," Sam said, gesturing toward the tray. "This is what's left from today's orders. I wasn't sure what to expect this year, but Valentine's always seems to bring out the sweet tooth in Havenport." Claire's eyes widened as she took in the display. "These are incredible," she said softly. "It's like edible art." Sam chuckled, picking up a delicate, heart-shaped cookie. Its surface was decorated with intricate icing patterns, soft pink swirls, and tiny white dots that shimmered in the light. "These are my heart-shaped sugar cookies. Classic Valentine's fare, but I like to get a little creative with the designs. Sometimes the simplest things have the most impact." He set the cookie down and picked up another treat, a mini raspberry tartlet with a buttery golden crust and a glossy red filling. "This one's a personal favorite," he said. "Tart, sweet, and just a little decadent. Perfect for Valentine's." Claire reached out, almost hesitant, and picked up a chocolate-dipped strawberry. The dark chocolate had a glossy sheen, with a delicate drizzle of white chocolate on top. "These are stunning," she said, "and they smell amazing. It's like you've captured the essence of the holiday on a single tray." "That's the goal," Sam said with a smile. "Valentine's Day is all about the little things, the details that show someone you care. I try to bring that same thoughtfulness into everything I bake. Claire turned the strawberry in her hand, examining the careful craftsmanship before setting it back down. "It's inspiring," she said. "The way you talk about baking. It's more than just food to you, isn't it?" Sam nodded, his expression softening. "It's a way of connecting with people. Baking's always been my way of saying what words sometimes can't. A warm loaf of bread, a sweet pastry. It's a way of showing love, even if it's just for a moment." Claire's pencil hovered over her sketchbook as she jotted down a few quick strokes, her gaze flicking between Sam and the tray of treats. "You know," she said, "I think you're right. There's something about the care that goes into these little things, the precision, the patience. It reminds me why I started drawing in the first place." Sam leaned against the counter, watching her sketch. "Well, if you need more inspiration, there's plenty more where that came from. I've got a whole kitchen of ingredients ready to go." Claire glanced up at him, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Careful, Sam. I might just take you up on that." As they shared a quiet laugh, the bakery seemed to hum with a gentle energy, the warm glow of the lights casting soft shadows on the walls. For the first time that evening, the Valentine's decorations didn't feel bittersweet to Sam. They felt like part of something more. Sam leaned casually against the counter, his curiosity growing as Claire's pencil moved gracefully across the pages of her sketchbook. She glanced up now and then, taking in the details of the bakery, the soft light reflecting off the heart-shaped garlands, the faint steam still rising from the tea Sam had poured for her. "You've created something really special here," Claire said, her voice carrying an easy warmth. "It's not just the baking, it's the whole atmosphere. It feels welcoming, like it's alive." Sam smiled, resting his hands on the counter. "That's exactly what I've always wanted it to feel like. A place where people can take a deep breath, slow down, and forget about the outside world for a while." Claire nodded, her pencil pausing mid-stroke. "I can tell. It's not just cozy. It's thoughtful. Every little detail feels like it has a purpose." Sam chuckled softly, as that's the baker in me. "Everything here has a reason, from the garlands to the recipes. Valentine's Day is a big deal for a bakery, you know. It's a day for celebrating love. And I think food, especially sweets, has a way of bringing people together." Claire tilted her head, her eyes meeting his. "You talk about it like it's more than a business, like it's personal." "It is," Sam said, his tone softening. "Baking has always been personal for me. It's how I grew up. My mom and I used to bake together all the time, especially on Valentine's Day. Cookies, pies, anything sweet. It was our thing. Sam returned from the kitchen with a small plate of chocolates and set them on the counter in front of Claire. She smiled as she reached for one, letting the rich, bittersweet flavor melt on her tongue. "These are amazing," Claire said, her voice full of admiration. "You must have a talent for more than just baking." Sam chuckled, leaning against the counter. Chocolate is part of the Valentine's tradition. It's not just about the flavor, it's about the symbolism. Chocolate has been a Valentine's Day staple for centuries, and there's a reason for it. Claire raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A history lesson with dessert? This I have to hear." "Well," Sam began, folding his arms across his chest. "It started with the Aztecs. They believed chocolate was a gift from the gods, something sacred. When Europeans discovered it, it quickly became associated with luxury and romance. By the 19th century, it was being marketed as the perfect Valentine's gift, a way to say, "I love you," without needing to say a word. Claire leaned forward slightly, her eyes bright with interest. "And here I thought it was just because it tastes good." Sam laughed. "That helps too. But I think it's more than that. Food has always been a way to express feelings. A good meal, a sweet treat. It's how people show love, even when they don't have the words for it." Claire nodded, her pencil scratching softly across her sketchbook. "That makes sense. There's something about sharing food that feels intimate. It's like you're letting someone into your world." Sam glanced at the plate of chocolates, then back at Claire. "Exactly. That's why I put so much care into everything I make. Whether it's a heart-shaped cookie or a loaf of bread, I want it to mean something. I want it to feel like more than just food." Claire paused her sketching to look up at him. "It does," she said simply. "You can feel it in this place. It's not just a bakery. It's a story." Sam's smile softened, and he looked around the room, taking in the twinkling lights and the faint glow of the ovens. "That's kind of the point," he said quietly. "Baking is about tradition. It's about connection. Valentine's Day just makes it a little more obvious." Claire tilted her head, studying him for a moment. "You talk about it like it's more than a job, like it's personal." "It is," Sam admitted. "My mom used to bake Valentine's cookies with me when I was a kid. It was our tradition. Every year, we'd make them for our friends and neighbors, and she'd always say the same thing. The secret ingredient is love. I didn't get it back then, but I think I do now." Claire's expression softened, and she smiled. "I like that. It's simple, but it's true. The things we care about always carry a little extra magic." For a moment, the bakery fell into a comfortable silence. The only sounds the faint hum of the ovens and the soft scratch of Claire's pencil. Sam watched her sketch, the warm glow of the room wrapping around them like a blanket. So, Claire said finally, breaking the silence, if chocolate and cookies are about love, what's your favorite Valentine's treat? Sam laughed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Honestly, a warm slice of bread with a little butter. It's not fancy, but it's comforting. And isn't that what love is supposed to be? Claire grinned, her pencil moving quickly across the page. I think you've just inspired my next piece. As the bakery settled into a tranquil rhythm, the glow of the ovens softened, and the snow continued to fall gently outside the frosted windows. Claire tucked her sketchbook under her arm, leaning forward slightly, her gaze fixed on Sam as he worked. You know, she began, her voice quieter now. Listening to you talk about baking, it feels like you've found something most people spend their whole lives looking for. Something that makes you feel connected to the world. Sam paused, setting down a tray of tartlets he had been arranging. I guess I never thought of it that way, he admitted, wiping his hands on his apron. I mean, I love what I do, but sometimes it feels like I'm just following a routine. It's comforting, sure, but I don't know if it's as deep as you make it sound. Claire tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. I think it's deeper than you realize. There's something about the way you talk about baking, like it's more than just a craft. It's a way of giving something to the world, of leaving your mark. Sam looked at her, his expression softening. And what about you? You're an artist. Surely you must feel the same way when you draw. Claire hesitated, her fingers brushing against the edge of her sketchbook. I used to, she admitted. But these days, it feels different. Like I'm always chasing something just out of reach. I've been traveling so much for work, always moving from one project to the next. And sometimes I wonder if I've lost the thing that made it special. Sam leaned against the counter, his brow furrowing slightly. That sounds lonely, he said, his voice gentle. Claire nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. It can be. Don't get me wrong. I love what I do. But there's a part of me that misses the simplicity of staying in one place, of having roots. It's hard to feel connected to anything when you're always on the move. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint crackle of the ovens and the soft ticking of the bakery's clock. Sam studied her, his expression thoughtful. You know, he said finally, I think connection doesn't always have to come from where you are. Sometimes it's about the people you meet along the way, the moments you share. Claire looked up, her eyes meeting his. Like this? Sam smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Yeah, he said simply. Like this. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then reached for her pencil and began sketching again. "You're right," she said softly. "It's the little things, the unexpected moments that remind you what matters." Sam nodded, watching as her pencil moved gracefully across the page. "And maybe those moments are what give everything else meaning," he said. Claire glanced up, her expression thoughtful but warm. "You're surprisingly wise for a baker, you know that?" Sam chuckled, shaking his head. "I think it's just the flour fumes getting to me." Claire laughed, the sound light and genuine, and for the first time in a long, long while, Sam felt a quiet sense of connection. A moment of shared understanding that felt as comforting as the warm glow of the bakery itself. The bakery grew quiet, the conversation easing into a peaceful lull. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly, blanketing Havenport in a serene stillness. The faint golden glow of the streetlights seeped through the frosted windows, casting delicate patterns on the walls. Claire had turned her attention back to her sketchbook, her pencil gliding effortlessly across the page. Sam watched her for a moment, his hands resting on the counter. There was something calming about the way she worked, focused but not hurried, as if she were fully immersed in the present moment. "What are you drawing now?" Sam asked softly, not wanting to disturb her flow. Without looking up, Claire smiled. "You?" Sam blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" She nodded, her pencil pausing briefly as she tilted her head to study him. "You and this place. The way you're standing there, watching me sketch, with the bakery glowing around you. It's cozy, like something out of a story." Sam felt a warmth rise to his cheeks, and he let out a quiet chuckle. "I'm not sure how interesting I'd be as a subject, but I'll take it as a compliment." Claire glanced up, her eyes glinting with a playful light. "You'd be surprised. There's a quiet strength in you, Sam. It comes through in the way you talk about baking, the way you've built this place. It's inspiring." Sam shifted slightly, unsure how to respond. "Well, thank you," he said after a moment. "I guess I just never thought of it that way. To me, it's just life. And maybe that's what makes it special," Claire said, her voice soft. "You don't see it, but it's there. The care you put into every detail, the way you make this bakery feel like home. It matters more than you realize." Sam leaned against the counter, letting her words sink in. He'd always thought of the bakery as a refuge for others, a place where people could find comfort. But hearing Claire talk about it this way made him see it in a new light, like he was part of something larger than he'd ever considered. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was companionable, filled with the gentle hum of the ovens and the faint scratch of Claire's pencil. Sam glanced at the clock, noting how late it was, but he didn't feel the usual tug of exhaustion. Instead, he felt an unexpected sense of ease, as though time had slowed to match the rhythm of the snow outside. "You know," Claire said, breaking the quiet, "I don't usually do this, but I think I'd like to share this one with you when it's finished." Sam tilted his head. "The sketch?" She nodded, her pencil still moving. "It feels like it belongs here, like it's a part of this place, just as much as you are." Sam's smile was soft but genuine. "I'd like that," he said. "And if you ever need a place to draw, or just a warm slice of bread, you know where to find me." Claire's laugh was light, and for a moment it felt like the bakery itself had come alive, wrapping them both in its glow. The warmth of the bakery seemed to cocoon them, the faint crackle of the ovens and the soft glow of the lights creating an atmosphere that felt timeless. Claire's pencil finally stilled, and she let out a satisfied sigh, closing her sketchbook gently. "It's getting late," she said, glancing toward the frosted windows. Snowflakes clung to the glass, their delicate patterns illuminated by the streetlights outside. "I should probably head out before the roads get too slippery." Sam straightened, glancing at the clock. It was later than he'd realized, but the time hadn't seemed to matter. "I hate to see you go," he said sincerely. "It's been nice having company tonight." Claire smiled as she slid her sketchbook into her bag. "It's been nice being here. Honestly, this was exactly what I needed. A quiet night in a place that feels like it belongs in a storybook. You've got something special here, Sam." He felt a flicker of warmth at her words, the sincerity in her voice resonating deeply. "Thank you," he said, his tone soft. "That means a lot coming from you." Claire hesitated for a moment, then pulled her sketchbook back out. "Before I go," she said, flipping to the page she'd been working on, "I want you to have this." She carefully tore out the page and handed it to him. The sketch was simple but beautifully detailed. Sam leaning against the counter, surrounded by trays of Valentine treats, the bakery glowing warmly in the background. It captured the essence of the evening, the quiet, cozy magic of the moment they had shared. Sam stared at it for a moment, his fingers brushing the edges of the paper. "This is incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Are you sure you want me to have it?" Claire nodded, her smile soft. "It belongs here. Besides, I've got plenty more pages to fill." He carefully placed the sketch on the counter, making a mental note to frame it later. "Thank you, Claire. This means more than you know." As she shrugged on her coat and adjusted her scarf, she glanced back at him, her eyes twinkling. "Maybe I'll stop by again someday. Havenport feels like the kind of place that's hard to stay away from." Sam's smile widened, and he opened the door for her, the cold night air sweeping in. "You're always welcome here," he said. "Take care out there." Claire stepped out into the snow, her boots crunching softly against the fresh powder. She turned back briefly, her breath visible in the chilly air. "Good night, Sam, and happy Valentine's Day." "Good night, Claire," Sam said, watching as she disappeared into the night. He stood in the doorway for a moment, the snow falling quietly around him. For the first time in a long while, Valentine's Day didn't feel lonely. It felt full of possibility, like the start of something new. Sam closed the door, the bell above it jingling softly as he turned the lock. The warmth of the bakery wrapped around him again, and the stillness of the night settled back into place. He stood for a moment, gazing at the sketch Claire had given him, still resting on the counter. The image felt alive, as if it had captured not just the bakery, but the atmosphere of the evening, the quiet comfort, the shared stories, and the unexpected connection. Sam ran his fingers along the edge of the paper, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He moved slowly through the bakery, tidying up the counters and stacking trays, his mind replaying their conversation. There was something about Claire, her openness, her curiosity, the way she saw the world. She hadn't just wandered into the bakery. It felt like she had brought something with her, a spark of inspiration that lingered even now. As he wiped down the last surface, he thought about her words. "You've got something special here." He'd always poured his heart into the bakery, but he'd never truly stopped to see it the way others did. To him, it had always been a place of work, a comforting routine, and a way to connect with the people of Havenport. But tonight, through Claire's eyes, it felt like more than that. Sam glanced at the chalkboard menu, still listing today's Valentine specials, and smiled to himself. Valentine's Day had always been about celebrating love, but it wasn't until tonight that he realized how many forms love could take. It wasn't just in the heart-shaped cookies or the carefully drizzled chocolate. It was in the warmth of a conversation, the shared laughter, and the quiet moments of understanding. He carefully picked up Claire's sketch and carried it to the small shelf near the counter, propping it up against a jar of dried lavender. It seemed to belong there, a reminder of the evening and the unexpected connection that had brightened his night. Sam stood back, admiring how the sketch seemed to bring the room to life in a new way. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. A piece of Claire left behind, tying her to the bakery in a way that felt permanent. As he turned off the lights one by one, the bakery grew darker, but the warmth of the evening stayed with him. The faint hum of the ovens was the only sound as Sam grabbed his coat and prepared to head upstairs to his apartment. He paused at the door, taking one last look at the quiet room. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in a peaceful stillness. And for the first time in a long while, Sam felt a sense of calm that went beyond the routines of his day. "Happy Valentine's Day," he murmured softly, his voice carrying a note of gratitude, as if the words were meant for someone just beyond the door. With that, he turned off the last light and climbed the stairs, the glow of the bakery fading behind him, but the warmth of the evening carrying him forward. The bakery sat quiet and still, its warmth lingering in the darkness like a fading ember. Outside, the snow fell steadily, blanketing the streets of Havenport in a soft hush. Sam climbed the narrow stairs to his apartment above the bakery, his footsteps light against the wooden steps, as if not to disturb the peaceful atmosphere below. When he reached his apartment, he set his coat aside and took a moment to peer out the window. From this angle, he could see the faint glow of the streetlights reflecting off the snow and the bakery's frosted windows below. The faint outlines of the garlands he'd hung earlier in the week were still visible, their playful shapes now bathed in moonlight. Sam thought about the evening, how unexpected it had been, yet how perfectly it seemed to fit. Claire's laugh echoed in his memory, light and genuine, like the soft notes of a familiar song. He could still picture her sitting at the counter, her pencil moving quickly, her presence adding an energy to the room that hadn't been there before. He turned back to the small shelf by the kitchen table where he had placed the sketch Claire had given him. He picked it up again, running his fingers over the edges of the paper. The image was simple, but brimming with life, capturing not just the physical space of the bakery, but the feeling of it, the glow, the warmth, the quiet joy of sharing a moment with someone new. Sam set the sketch back on the shelf, propping it up beside a small vase of dried flowers. It seemed to fit there, as though it had always been meant to join the small collection of meaningful trinkets he'd gathered over the years. For a moment, he stood in the stillness, letting the weight of the day settle over him. Valentine's Day had always been bittersweet, a day spent celebrating love for others while quietly longing for a connection of his own. Tonight, though, had been different. It wasn't grand or dramatic. It was simple, unexpected, and full of the kind of quiet magic he rarely allowed himself to hope for. Sam made a mental note to leave the bakery door unlocked tomorrow morning, just in case Claire decided to return. The thought brought a small smile to his face, a spark of something warm and hopeful settling in his chest. He switched off the last lamp and moved toward his bed, the faint sound of the snowstorm outside lulling him into calm. As he pulled the blankets over himself, he closed his eyes, replaying the night in his mind. The conversations, the laughter, the shared moments that made the world feel a little smaller, a little more connected. Downstairs, the bakery sat in quiet repose, waiting for the morning light to spill through its windows and fill it with life once more. But for now, it rested just as Sam did, wrapped in the peace of a Valentine's night that had brought something unexpected and special. As sleep began to take him, Sam let his last thought linger. A simple wish, barely spoken, but filled with hope. I hope she comes back.